Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you're here. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a downer, to be honest. It's been a couple of days since the US election. I've been feeling really down for obvious reasons, like many people, like many women around the world, and I'm trying to look for good news. As many of you will know, I work as an environmental consultant. I studied conservation policy and I'm also an ecologist. So something I care a lot about is climate change. I wanted to do today's video just to break down the potential impacts that Trump's presidency is going to have on the climate, climate negotiations, COP29, which is happening this week, so very timely. Hopefully it makes it a little bit less confusing. There is also some good news and I'm going to touch on some of those at the end because it's not the end of the world. So as we all know, doesn't need explaining, but Trump is a climate denier. He has called climate change a hoax, and so unfortunately another term of President Trump is not good news for climate change. I thought this would also be a good time to quickly punctuate this video with the fact that record-breaking hurricanes are currently hitting the US, and this year is predicted to be the hottest year on record once again. My heart goes out to the people who have been affected by the hurricane, the fires in Europe, the fire in California, and the impacts of sea level rise on the small islands around the world. Trump is a big supporter of oil and gas, and in his words has planned to drill baby drill, which is worrying. As we all know, oil and gas are fossil fuels, non-renewable, and have huge impacts on greenhouse gas emissions globally. It's likely that US-based oil companies are gearing up various plans, ready to get the green light from President Trump in January to start on those big multi-billion-dollar projects which they wouldn't have been permitted to do under Biden. One good thing though is that a second Trump administration isn't likely to stop the country's transition to clean energy, full stop. Costs for a lot of new green energy technologies are falling very, very quickly, and so it's very much in the interests of companies to invest in clean fuels, including oil and gas companies. And a lot of these companies are under pressure from their investors to move towards renewable fuels. I have also read that under Project 2025, although Trump has now kind of distanced himself from this, there were proposals to eliminate the office at the Environmental Protection Agency. I don't know though if that will actually happen. One big topic which is very important this week is COP29 and the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is a legally binding treaty that aims to limit global warming and reduce greenhouse gas emissions globally. Each country publishes what is known as an NDC, or a nationally determined contribution, and this is essentially like their contribution to the Paris Agreement, and essentially acts as a kind of climate action plan for each nation. During Trump's last presidency, he withdrew the USA from the Paris Agreement, which actually took a while to come into force, which meant that it didn't have too many impacts because Biden re-signed the agreement on his first day in office. This time though, President-elect Trump has expressed plans to once again withdraw the USA from the Paris Accord, and now he has control of the Senate. That is probably not going to be as difficult as I would like to hope. It's also likely to be a much quicker process this time, and would only take about a year. So should he be sworn into office in January, he's likely to be able to exit from the Paris Agreement by January 2026. If the US withdraw, which is looking like they're likely to, they would no longer be required to prepare and submit an NDC, or nationally determined contribution, making note that the USA is the second largest greenhouse gas emitter after China. Not submitting an NDC and not being part of the Paris Accord means that they won't be held to account on their greenhouse gas emission. The impacts that the USA has on greenhouse gas emissions is vast. Like I said, they're the second largest emitter in the world, and so if they are not being held to account on their emissions, we're likely to see a big spike in emissions over the course of Trump's presidency. Like I said though, when Biden was sworn in as president, on day one, he re-signed the Paris Agreement. This is a possibility if Democrats were elected again 4 years later. However, Trump has also expressed plans, and I have been advised to also pull out of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or the UNFCCC. This is kind of the treaty under which the Paris Agreement was negotiated, and it's what organises all of the UN climate talk, including all of the COPs. Leaving the UNFCCC would mean an immediate exit of the Paris Agreement, and it's likely that rejoining the UNFCCC is going to be a lot harder than just re-signing to the Paris Agreement. I should also say that the UNFCCC is you know, a pretty big deal. 198 countries have ratified this agreement, and no country has ever withdrawn. Outside of the climate implications, the most important implication this would have is on funds. I don't like to bring everything back to money, but as a biologist, I've had to learn to kind of speak the same language as politicians and economists. If the US were to withdraw, the funds available to the UN Green Climate Fund, which is the kind of main operating entity under the UNFCCC financial mechanism, is going to significantly drop and likely make China the largest funder. It's obviously also going to harm international relations. The US will have little sway in the conversations around climate change and the transition to green fuels and new technologies. This is all pretty disheartening, and there are going to be some serious implications if Trump does the things that he says he's going to do as president. But there are some good things to take away, and it's definitely not all over. And it's actually unlikely to derail kind of global climate goals. If anything, it's going to strengthen China's position as the kind of leader in green technology development. And like I say, kind of by default, it will make China the biggest donor to the UN Green Climate Fund. Because of the federal system in the USA, a lot of states are now quote unquote Trump-proofing themselves. So I've read California, for example, have been making laws such that it would be much harder for Trump to overturn them, and this includes climate disclosures and these kinds of things. So domestically he probably won't be able to have as many impacts as he would like. It's also likely to be harder for him to eliminate the Biden administration's massive investments in clean energy. A lot of these were put through Congress, such as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. The money from a lot of these investment acts actually flows largely towards Republican states, and so it wouldn't necessarily be in Trump's interest to overturn these, because a lot of his supporters will be seeing quite a lot of money flow into their states as a result of these acts. And like I say, because Biden put these through Congress, it's going to be quite difficult for Trump to overturn them because he'd need support from both houses. So like I mentioned, COP29 is this week, and I'm going to do a separate video on COP probably at the end of it to kind of discuss some key themes. I know that Biden is not going to be attending COP this year, and it's yet to be seen what kind of contributions the US is going to make. Climate finance is going to be quite a big topic at COP this year. And actually, when you look at the numbers, Biden didn't do a huge amount on climate change. Their contributions were not very large compared to other countries of that size during his administration. And so even though Trump is going to roll back on investments on green technology and climate change, it's not going to be a huge difference compared to the last kind of 10 years or so. And I think it might kind of strengthen the world outside the US's contributions and make them think about ways that we can achieve the climate goals without the help of the USA. So I hope this is helpful. I'm sorry this is not the happiest video. I think that there are still positives, and it's definitely not the end of the world. We will have to, because we have no option. If Trump withdraws from the Paris Agreement and potentially the UNFCCC, we have to find ways of achieving those goals without them. I didn't see a lot of talk of climate change in either of the candidates' campaigns, but I really want people to be aware of it because there are going to be some significant impacts. If it's anything in particular you want to know, you can send me a message on Instagram and I'll try to cover it in future videos. Like I said, I'm going to do one on the COP, which is happening this week, which is very exciting. And hopefully there will be some really positive developments that I can talk about because I feel like we all need a bit of a mood lift. So yeah, I will keep you updated. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourself, find some positive news, and I will see you in the next video really soon.